My name is Jojo Fung. I'm from the Society of Jesus. My responsibility is to share with you chapter 3 of Fratelli Tutti, entitled Envisaging and Engendering an Open Society. The schema for my presentation will be one, looking at the presuppositions for an open world, and secondly, from an indigenous perspective, and last of all is to mention the end goals of an open world. To begin with, I would like to just mention that an open world as a concept, as a construct, a vision, begins with each eye at the center who opens her or himself out in a concentric circle to the religious culture, others of the different cultures and of every nation. The possibility of an open world is premised on FT 87 quote, human beings are so made that they cannot live, develop, and find fulfillment except in sincere gift of self to others. I think this is foundational presupposition that we have to take consideration of. I will be really sharing this from the perspective of the religious culture other, that is the indigenous communities, especially from the perspective of Crystal Two Bulls, a member of the Northern Cheyenne and Oglala Lakota tribes, who helped start the global solidarity campaigns against the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline. You can see the YouTube, if you like, to get a better view, understanding of the indigenous perspective, because they too, as communities of indigenous peoples or Native Americans in the US, like the rest in the world, would desire such an open society as well. An open society is possible based on the shared presuppositions. A, life exists where there is bonding, communion, fraternity, and life is stronger than death when it is built on true relationships and bonds of fidelity. Fratelli Tutti 87. Henceforth, I'll just say FT instead of Fratelli Tutti. B, in the depths of every heart, love creates bonds and expands existence. For it draws people out of themselves and towards other. Since we are made for love, in each one of us a law of ecstasis seems to operate. The lover goes outside the self to find a fuller existence in another, in FT number 88. Also, the presupposition on social friendship to bring about an open world based on FD 99, which says, quote, a love capable of transcending borders is the basis of what in every city and country can be called social friendship. Genuine social friendship within a society makes true universal openness. So social friendship to true universal openness is another foundation, a presupposition for envisaging, engendering an open world. Furthermore, an open world is possible based on social friendship, but characterized by hospitality. Hospitality, quote, fosters openness and union with others. It's made possible by the charity that God infuses, FT90, which enables us to rise, quote, to the challenge and the gift present in an encounter with those outside one's own circle, again in FT99, namely the poor and pilgrims who must be treated with the utmost care and attention, from FT99. And to explain further on hospitality in social relationship, quotes, it excludes no one because it builds up a fraternity that's open to all and moves us to seek the best for their lives, from FT94. My own remark is it is difficult, but God's Spirit often moves us beyond our circle, ourselves. In FT 100, the metaphor, the image of the Good Samaritan is important in terms of becoming who the humans should be and need to be if we need to build an open society. Quote, The Good Samaritan transcended these narrow classifications. He himself did not fit into any of those categories. He was simply a foreigner without a place in society. Free of every labor and position, he was able to interrupt his journey, change his plans, and unexpectedly come to the aid of an injured person who needed his help. Then the man on the road, bruised and abandoned, was a distraction, an interruption from all that. And in any event, he was hardly important. He was a nobody, undistinguished, irrelevant to their plans for the future. In FT 110, the presupposition is on freedom and fraternity, foundations to democracy for an open world. In FT 110 code, words like freedom, democracy, or fraternity prove meaningless. For the fact is that only when our economic and social system no longer produces even a single victim, a single person cast aside, we will be able to celebrate the feast of universal fraternity in an open society. A truly human and fraternal society will be capable of ensuring in an efficient and stable way that each of its members is accompanied at every stage of life, not only by providing for their basic needs, but by enabling them to give the best of themselves, even though their performance may be less than optimum, their pace slow, or their efficiency limited. And going into FT 111, humans are not monads, and so, quote, unless the rights of each individual are harmoniously ordered to the greater good, those rights will end up being considered limitless and consequently will become a source of conflict and violence. In FT 114, solidarity is very important, coupled with solidity in an open world. So solidarity is understood, quote, as a moral virtue and social attitude born of personal conversion, calls for commitment on the part of those responsible for education and formation. I think first of families called to be primary and vital mission of educations. Families are the first place where the values of love and fraternity, togetherness and sharing, concern and care for others are lived out and handed on. It mentioned about teachers as well, not to forget, institutions like LST and universities like Athenaeus. In 115, at a time when everything seems to disintegrate and lose consistency, it is good for us to appeal to solidity, born of the consciousness that we are responsible for the fragility of others as we strive to build a common future. So the two, solidarity and solidity, are interrelated for an open world. In FT 112, the presupposition about the common good in an open world, which has to be understood in relation to scripture. And it states, the New Testament describes one fruit of the Holy Spirit from Galatians 5:22 as akatosin. The Greek word expresses attachment to the good, pursuit of the good, striving for excellence and what is best for others, not just for oneself, for others, their growth in maturity and health, the cultivation of values, and not simply material well-being. A similar expression exists in Latin, benevolencia. This is an attitude that wills the good of others. It bespeaks a yearning for goodness, an inclination towards all that is fine and excellent, a desire to fill the life of others with what is beautiful, sublime, and edifying. Again, explaining solidarity in 116, it means much more than engaging in sporadic acts of generosity. It means thinking and acting in terms of community. It's a relationship or relationality. It means that the lives of all are prior to the appropriation of goods by a few. It means combating the structural causes of poverty, inequality, the lack of work, land, and housing, the denial of social and labor rights. It means confronting the destructive effects of the empire of money. Solidarity, understood in its most profound meaning, is a way of making history, and this is what popular movements are doing. And again, falling back on Krista Tubul's, that solidarity, that global solidarity campaign is precisely that, a popular solidarity movement in order to unite people who are indigenous people, and in solidarity with them, a global movement campaigning for an open world where indigenous communities find themselves a home in our common home, which is sacred to them. Very interestingly, um, Pope Francis talked about the social role of property, and very personal at that, in FT 120. For my part, he quotes, I would observe that the Christian tradition has never recognized the right to private property as absolute or inviolable, or has stressed the social purpose of all, and has stressed the social purpose of all forms of private property. And this is very true in terms of the ancestral homeland of indigenous people. The principle of common use of created goods is the first principle of the whole ethical and social order. It is a natural and inherent right that takes priority over others. All other rights have to do with the goods necessary for the integral fulfillment of persons. And from an indigenous perspective, not person alone, but communities in relation to the ancestral land and nature, or Mother Earth, including that of private property of any type of property, should, in the words of St. Paul VI, in no way hinder this right, but should actively facilitate its implementation. Also, this presupposition about the appropriate aim of development in FT 122, quote, development must not aim at the amassing of wealth by a few, but must ensure human rights, personal and social, economic and political, including the rights of nations and of peoples. For indigenous people, it is also religious and cultural, or we use the word religious cultural rights, not just of individuals, but of nations and of peoples. The right of some to free enterprise and market freedom cannot supersede the rights of peoples and the dignity of the poor, or, for that matter, respect for the natural environment. For if we make something our own, it is only to administer it for the good of all. This has always been the wisdom of indigenous people throughout their ancestral history on the world stage. Again, looking at the presupposition on the appropriate aim of development, FT 123, looking at business activity. Well, it is a noble vocation directed at producing wealth and improving our world. God encourages us to develop the talents God gave us, and God has made our universe one of immense potential. In God's plan, each individual is called to promote his or her own development, and this includes finding the best economic and technological means of multiplying goods and increasing wealth. Business abilities, which are a gift from God, should always be clearly directed to the development of others and to eliminating poverty, especially through the creation of diversified work opportunities. But it must build out the entire well-being of humans and more than humans on this planet Earth, according to indigenous wisdom. In FT 123, quote, if every human being possesses an inalienable dignity, if all people are my brothers and sisters, and if the world truly belongs to everyone, then it matters little whether my neighbor was born in my country or elsewhere. This is talking about an open world where they should be what we call a global society for all, not just for people of the nations alone. In FT 126, we are really speaking about a new network of international relations in an open world. Since there is no way to resolve the serious problems of our world if we continue to think only in terms of mutual assistance between individuals or small groups. Nor should we forget that inequity affects not only individuals but entire countries. It compels us to consider an ethics of international relations. Indeed, justice requires recognizing and respecting not only the rights of individuals, but also social rights and the rights of peoples. This means finding a new way to ensure the fundamental right of peoples to subsistence and progress. Now, the last line is so important for indigenous communities. It is really the fundamental right of peoples as a community, as a nation, as peoples populating ancestral homeland to subsistence and progress. Progress not in terms of economics alone, but in terms of spirituality, in terms of interrelations among peoples, among more than human beings, among all life forms on, uh, on the face of Mother Earth. Now, what are the end goal of an open world? At least one, to overcome racism. Quote from FT97. Some peripherals are close to us in city centers or within our families. Close to us due, for instance, racism is a virus that quickly mutates and instead of disappearing, goes into hiding and lurks in waiting. And this is so true. The racism against blacks, against Native Americans, against the colored citizens in almost every country. And then the end goal is really to give voice to the discriminated, the physically challenged. In FT98, Pope Francis said, let me repeat, we need to have the courage to give a voice to those who are discriminated against due to their disability, because sadly, in some countries, even today, people find it hard to acknowledge them as persons of equal dignity. And that must be said, not only those who are physically challenged, but also those who are aged, those who are of a different sexual orientation. And of course, we must never forget the communities of womankind in our world, their voices and their dignity and their fundamental rights to participation, to become co-creators, must always be heard, respected, included. And also, the end goal of an open world is to end crass individualism, as mentioned in FT 105. Quote, radical individualism is a virus that is extremely difficult to eliminate, for it is clever. It makes us believe that everything consists in giving free rein to our own ambitions, as if by pursuing even greater ambitions and creating safety nets, we would somehow be serving the common good. That is not so. That is really not so. For indigenous people, the common good includes not just people, but the spirit world, the land, the ancestors, all life forms on planet Earth. That is considered sacred because their ancestors are buried on their ancestral land. Again, the end goal is to end a globalization of uniformity as mentioned in FT 100. So the Pope decries, quote, one model of globalization, in fact, consciously aims at one-dimensional uniformity and seeks to eliminate all differences and traditions in the superficial quest for unity. If a certain kind of globalization claims to make everyone uniform, to level everyone out, that globalization destroys the rich gifts and uniqueness of each person and each people. And Pope Francis always used the image of polyhedron, while I think the indigenous people will say it is really an ancestral homeland of diversity, of richness. And again, he mentioned in FT 100 Quote, the world of its, it deprives the world of its various colors, its beauty, and ultimately its humanity. For the future is not monochrome. If we are courageous, we can contemplate it in all the variety and diversity of what each individual person has to offer. The future of an open society, at least based on 1 to 7, has this to say. Certainly, all this calls for an alternative way of thinking. On the other hand, if we accept the great principle that there are rights born of our inalienable human dignity, we can rise to the challenge of envisaging a new humanity. We can aspire to a world that provides land, housing, and work for all. This is the true path of peace, not the senseless and myopic strategy of sowing fear and mistrust in the face of outside threats, referring to the politics of populism. Continue, for a real and lasting peace will only be possible on the basis of a global ethics of solidarity and cooperation in the service of a future shaped by interdependence and shared responsibility in the whole human family. This then is the the vision of this open society in chapter 3 that Pope Francis portrays for us to pray about, to reflect on. I have reflected it in the light of the indigenous communities around the world, especially their age or wisdom, and more than that, their spirituality, because of their rich religio-cultural traditions. So all the best in your reflection and your prayer on this chapter 3, eliciting from yourself, um, the movement of God's Spirit blowing across the face of the earth towards an open world where there is universal fraternity that begins with you and I allowing the Spirit to carry us beyond our own circle, be it family or friends or even the society of Jesus, and beyond the church and Christianity, so that we embrace all humans, and we embrace all more than humans in common home. Okay, thank you. Bye.